Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are doing something a little special and honestly, quite massive. I need you to mentally adjust your internal clock.
Little bit of time travel.
Exactly. We are transporting ourselves to a very specific date, February 1st, 2026.
A significant date on the calendar indeed.
It is the day the union budget for 2026-27 was presented. And before we get into the numbers, and there are some staggering numbers today, believe me, we have to set the scene. This wasn't just another speech in Parliament. This was the first budget prepared and presented in the new Kartavya Bhavan.
That's right. And that location is symbolic. It's not just a name change.
No.
The government has been pushing this narrative for a while now, shifting the conversation from rights to duties or kartavya. The overarching theme of this entire presentation by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is a roadmap for a Viksit Bharat, or developed India, by 2047.
The centenary goal.
It's all about the centenary. We are transitioning from the 75th year of independence and looking straight down the barrel at 2047.
It feels like a pivot point. Usually when we talk about budgets, listeners, and honestly, even I might expect dry statistics, deficit numbers, and maybe a little bit about the price of petrol or cigarettes.
Right, the usual suspects.
But digging through these documents, this one feels different. We've got turtle trails, we've got she-marts, we have high-tech biomanufacturing, and perhaps the biggest headline for the average person, a brand new income tax act.
It is a dense document, but the philosophy behind it is actually quite streamlined. The finance minister was very clear in the opening remarks.
Oh, yeah.
The core philosophy here is action over ambivalence and reform over rhetoric.
Action over ambivalence. That's a strong way to start. Almost aggressive. It sounds like they're tired of sitting on the fence.
It does imply a certain impatience with the status quo, I think that's fair to say. And to understand how they plan to take that action, we have to look at the structural framework of the speech. It's built around three specific kartavyas, or duties.
Okay, let's break those down before we get into the weeds. What are the three pillars holding this thing up?
Okay, so the first kartavya is about accelerating and sustaining economic growth.
The engine room.
This is the engine room, manufacturing, productivity, resilience against global volatility.
Yeah.
It's the hardware of the economy.
Okay, so making the pie bigger. Simple enough.
Exactly. The second kartavya is about fulfilling aspirations and building capacity.
The people part.
This is about the people, human capital, skills, and making citizens partners in that prosperity. The software, if you will.
I like that. Hardware and software. What's the third?
And the third kartavya is aligned with Sabka Vikas, ensuring inclusive access. This is about making sure that growth doesn't just happen in the skyscrapers of Mumbai or the tech parks of Bengaluru,
Right.
but that it reaches the remote corners of the Northeast and the rural heartland, spreading it all out.
So our mission for this deep dive is to decode these three duties. We're going to look at the high-tech pivot in manufacturing, the massive shift in infrastructure strategy, and then, of course, what everyone is waiting for, the money in your pocket, the taxes. But I want to start with the macro view. When you open the hood of the Indian economy based on this speech, is the engine actually running smooth, or are there warning lights flashing?
It seems to be running hot, but controlled. That's the sense I get. And the most critical metric global investors and economists look at is fiscal consolidation.
I feel like we hear this term every year, and it usually makes people's eyes glaze over. Let's unpack it properly. What does it actually mean for us, the regular people?
Simply put, it's the government's effort to reduce its borrowing.
Like a household cutting back on credit card debt?
Exactly like that. Think of the government like a household. When the government spends more than it earns, it runs a fiscal deficit. It has to borrow to fill that gap. If you borrow too much, interest payments eat up your budget. But worse, you crowd out private businesses.
Crowd out. Explain that. That's another one of those terms.
Well, there's a limited amount of money available in the market to be borrowed from banks, bonds, and investors.
A finite pool of cash.
A finite pool. If the government is greedy and borrows all of it to fund its deficit, there is no money left for a private company to borrow to build a factory. Or the interest rates go so high that the private company can't afford to borrow.
Right. So the government is essentially hogging the credit card and nobody else can get a loan.
Exactly. So reducing the deficit is about stepping back and letting the private sector have access to capital. And on this front, the report card is looking disciplined. The fiscal deficit target for the coming year, 2026-27, is estimated at 4.3% of GDP.
4.3%. Is that good? It sounds specific.
It's very good when you look at the trajectory. The target was to get below 4.5% by 2025-26, and they achieved 4.4%. So this isn't a sudden drop.
It's part of a plan.
It's part of a glide path. Getting down to 4.3% signals to the world, to the credit rating agencies in New York and London, that India is serious about living within its means. It builds credibility.
And what about the total debt, the total amount we owe as a country?
That's the debt to GDP ratio. It's estimated at 55.6% for 2026-27. The long-term target is to get that down to 50%, give or take a percent, by 2030-31.
Why does that specific number matter? Why 50%? Is that a magic number?
It's not magic, but it's a globally respected threshold for emerging economies, because lower government borrowing frees up capital. If the government isn't hogging all the available credit, interest rates can potentially come down.
Which means cheaper loans for cars, for houses.
For businesses. Private companies have more money to invest in factories, startups, and innovation. It essentially oils the gears of the private sector. It turns the government from a competitor for funds into a facilitator.
But wait, I have to play devil's advocate here. If they are borrowing less, does that mean they are spending less on the things we actually need? Like roads, bridges, and power plants. Usually fiscal discipline is code for austerity.
That's the surprise in this budget.
Yeah.
And it's a big one. Usually, yes, fiscal consolidation means spending cuts. But here, they've managed to increase capital expenditure, or CapEx.
This is the money spent on building assets, right? Not just paying salaries or pensions.
Building things that generate future income. And the CapEx push is massive. They have allocated 12.2 lakh crores for 2026-27.
12.2 lakh crores. That number is so big it's hard to visualize.
To give you context, in 2014-15, that number was just 2 lakh crores.
Wow.
Last year, it was 11.1 lakh crores. So despite tightening the belt on the deficit, the government is still doing the heavy lifting on building assets, railways, power, roads. They are betting that this infrastructure will stimulate the economy enough to pay for itself.
So the government is building the house, hoping the tenants, the private sector, will move in, set up shop, and pay rent in the form of taxes.
That's a very apt analogy, and it leads us directly into that first pillar, Kartavya 1, accelerating growth.
The hardware.
Exactly. But here is where I noticed a shift. This isn't just about building highways anymore. There seems to be a very specific pivot toward high-tech manufacturing. I was reading through the notes on Biopharma Shakti. What is this?
Yeah, that caught my eye too. Shakti implies power. What kind of power are we talking about here?
This is a fascinating shift in strategy. For decades, India has been known as the pharmacy of the world, right?
Right. We make a lot of pills for a lot of people.
We supply affordable medicines to Africa, the U.S., everywhere. But that success was largely built on generic drugs making chemical copies of existing pills like aspirin or antibiotics.
Cheap, effective, but low margin volume business.
Exactly. It's chemistry. You mix ingredients A and B in a vat, you get pill C. But the government has recognized that India's disease burden is shifting.
How so?
We aren't just fighting infectious diseases anymore. We're fighting non-communicable diseases like diabetes, cancer, and autoimmune disorders.
The lifestyle diseases, the ones that are complex and chronic.
Yes. And the future of treating those isn't just simple chemicals. It's biologics and biosimilars.
Okay, pause there. You have to break that down. What is the actual difference between a chemical drug and a biologic for someone who isn't a scientist?
Okay, think of it like this. A chemical drug is like a bicycle. It's a small, simple molecule. You can manufacture it in a factory by welding parts together. It's mechanical, predictable.
I can follow that.
A biologic is like growing a tree. It's a huge, complex molecule made from living organisms, bacteria, yeast, or even animal cells. You have to grow them in massive, sterile tanks called bioreactors.
So it's biology, not just chemistry.
Precisely. If the temperature changes by half a degree or the pH is off by a tiny fraction, the whole batch dies. It is infinitely more complex, but also far more effective for these complex diseases.
So we are moving from welding bicycles to genetic gardening.
That is a perfect way to put it. Biopharma Shakti is an initiative with an outlay of 10,000 crores over 5 years to pivot the industry in this direction.
And what does that 10,000 crores actually buy? Is it just grants to companies?
No, it's more about building the ecosystem. They're setting up 3 new National Institutes of Pharmaceutical Education and Research, or NIPERS, and upgrading 7 existing ones.
So brain power.
We need the brain power to manage these living factories. But the really interesting part, I think, is the clinical trials.
What's the plan there?
They want to create a network of 1,000 accredited trial sites across the country. This is huge.
Why is that so important?
Because historically, Indian clinical trial data wasn't always trusted globally by regulators like the FDA. There were concerns about standards. By creating a network of high-quality accredited sites, you build trust.
I see.
If you can develop the drug here and test the drug here with credible data, you keep the intellectual property and the value chain within the country. It's about moving up the value ladder from a contract manufacturer to an innovator.
Speaking of moving up the value ladder, we have to talk about chips. The India Semiconductor Mission, or ISM, we've heard about this for a few years now. Is this just more of the same? We're going to build chips, we promise.
No, this is ISM 2.0. The first version, ISM 1.0, was about getting a foot in the door.
The appetizer.
The appetizer, exactly. It was mostly assembly, testing, marking, and packaging. The so-called ATMP units. That's the packaging of chips made elsewhere. ISM 2.0 is about expansion and depth. It's the main course.
How so? What's different?
They're targeting the supply chain that feeds the chip factories. You can't make chips without ultra-pure gases, specific chemicals, photoresists, and very complex equipment.
The things that go into the factory before the chip comes out.
Exactly. ISM 2.0 funds the production of those materials here. But more importantly, they're funding the design of full-stack Indian IP.
IP meaning intellectual property. So designing the brains of the chips, not just baking them according to someone else's recipe.
Correct. If you design the chip, you own the brain of the device. If you just manufacture it, you're just the hands. ISM 2.0 wants India to be the brain. They've also increased the outlay for electronics component manufacturing to 40,000 crores.
40,000 crores, that's a massive jump. Why such a big increase?
Yes, and the documents say that's because the investment commitments they received were double what they expected. The demand is there.
The pull is there.
The pull is there from global companies who want to de-risk their supply chains and make components here.
And this all connects to something else I saw in the report, rare earths. You can't make chips or batteries or fighter jets without these minerals.
You've hit on a critical point of strategic autonomy. It's the theme that runs through this entire section. You cannot be a high-tech superpower if you rely on imports for the raw ingredients.
Especially from one or two countries.
Especially from one or two countries. The budget proposes dedicated rare earth corridors in Odisha, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, and Tamil Nadu.
Why those specific states? Is it random?
Not at all. It's geology. Those states have coastal sands, monazite sands that are rich in these minerals like neodymium, praseodymium, the building blocks of modern magnets and electronics.
So we've had this treasure on our beaches all along.
We've known they were there for decades, but mining them is technically difficult and environmentally sensitive. The plan now is to promote not just mining but processing.
So we don't just export the sand.
We don't just export the sand. We process it into the high-value oxides and metals. It's about reducing critical import dependencies. If supply chains get disrupted again, like we saw in the early 2020s, India needs to be able to feed its own tech industry.
It's about security as much as economics. Strategic autonomy sounds great, but it requires getting your hands dirty in the mines, and it looks like they're finally willing to do that.
And in the chemical parks, too. They're launching 3 dedicated chemical parks with a plug-and-play model.
Okay, we've talked about the big tech stuff, biopharma, chips, but what about the little guy? The MSMEs. They're always called the backbone of the economy, but usually they get broken backs. What's in this budget for them?
There is a significant focus here. They've announced a 10,000 crore MSME growth fund specifically to create champion enterprises.
Champion enterprises.
The idea is to identify small businesses with high potential and give them the capital and mentorship to scale up, to become mid-sized or large global players, not just helping them survive, but helping them thrive.
But the biggest problem for small businesses isn't usually lack of ambition. It's cash flow. It's waiting to get paid by the big guys.
That is the perennial struggle. And this is where the budget gets quite technical but very innovative. They're expanding the use of CRADIS, the trade receivables discounting system.
That's a mouthful. I need you to break that down like I'm 5. Or maybe like I'm a small business owner who hasn't slept in a week because I need to make payroll.
Okay, let's do that. Imagine you run a small factory making bolts. You sell 10 lakhs worth of bolts to a giant auto company. They take the bolts, but they give you an invoice saying, we will pay you in 90 days.
Classic. Meanwhile, I have to pay my workers on Friday and my steel supplier tomorrow?
Exactly. CRADIS allows you to take that invoice, that promise of payment, upload it to a digital platform, and sell it to a financier, like a bank.
You sell the invoice itself.
You sell the debt. The financier gives you, say, 9.8 lakhs immediately. You get your cash now. The financier waits 90 days and collects the full 10 lakhs from the auto company. They make a small profit, you get liquidity.
Okay, that exists already. So what's new in this budget? What's the upgrade?
The problem was that there weren't enough financiers willing to buy these invoices. The system was starved of capital. The budget proposes turning these receivables, these invoices, into asset-backed securities.
Asset-backed securities. That sounds like the kind of Wall Street jargon that caused the 2008 financial crisis. Should we be worried?
It's the same mechanic, but the context is completely different and hopefully much safer.
Okay, explain.
Here's what it means in practice. It means pooling together thousands of these small invoices from thousands of small bolt makers across the country. You bundle them up into a big financial product, a security,
A basket of invoices.
a basket of invoices. Then you sell that product, that security, to big investors like pension funds or mutual funds who are looking for safe, short-term investments.
So a pension fund in Mumbai could effectively be investing in a bundle of MSME invoices from Coimbatore and Ludhiana.
Exactly. By doing this, you are flooding the market with liquidity. If huge investors are buying these securities, it means there are massive amounts of money available to pay the MSMEs instantly. It lowers the cost of borrowing for the small guy because the risk is spread out over thousands of invoices.
So it turns unpaid bills, which are a liability for a small business, into a tradable asset class for a big investor. That is surprisingly creative.
It is. It's financial engineering for the little guy. It connects the smallest factory in a Tier 3 town to the biggest investor in the country. It's a plumbing fix, but it could be revolutionary.
Let's move to Section 3, infrastructure. We touched on the massive spending, but the geography of it seems to be shifting. The outline mentions a shift to Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities.
This is what they're calling the city economic regions concept.
Okay.
For a long time, infrastructure spend was heavily biased toward Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, the big metros. But those cities are saturating.
They're choking on traffic and pollution.
They are. The growth potential now lies in cities with populations over 5 lakh, places like Surat, Coimbatore, Patna, Indore. The next wave of urbanization.
And there was a mention of temple towns. Is that a formal economic category now? That seems new.
It is now. Religious tourism is a massive economic driver in India, and it seems the government is formally acknowledging that. We saw what happened with Ayodhya and Varanasi.
The local economy is just exploding.
Exactly. So the budget allocates 5,000 crores specifically for these city economic regions. But there is a catch.
There's always a catch.
The money is released on a reform-come-result basis.
Perform or perish, or perform to get paid.
Essentially, the central government is saying, we have the money, but we aren't just handing it over. The cities have to show they're implementing reforms, improving urban planning, digitizing land records, improving municipal tax collection to unlock the funding.
So they're forcing better governance.
It incentivizes better governance at the local level. It gives the mayors and municipal corporations some real skin in the game.
It's a carrot and stick approach. And how are we connecting these emerging cities? I saw mention of high-speed rail. Is that finally happening at scale?
It seems to be accelerating. 7 new corridors were mentioned. Routes like Mumbai-Pune, Hyderabad-Bengaluru, Varanasi-Siliguri. This is about creating rapid transit between these new economic hubs, not just connecting the old metros.
But the more colorful addition, I thought, was the waterways and seaplanes.
Yes.
I have to ask about the seaplanes. I made a joke in the intro about commuting by seaplane, but is this real? Or is it just a gimmick for tourism brochures?
It is real, and there is economic logic to it. They are introducing a seaplane viability gap funding scheme.
Viability gap funding? That sounds like admitting it's not profitable from the get-go.
It means the government acknowledges that running a seaplane service, especially the early days, might not be profitable immediately. So they will cover the loss, the viability gap, for a period to encourage private operators to start routes. Think about India's geography. We have massive coastlines, huge river systems, and islands like the Andamans and Lakshadweep.
Where building an airport is a nightmare.
It's expensive and ecologically damaging. Building a runway in a remote island or a hilly river town is a huge undertaking. But a seaplane just needs water.
A patch of calm water.
Exactly. It requires minimal ground infrastructure. It's a way to connect remote areas and boost high-end tourism without pouring concrete everywhere.
So it's last-mile connectivity for the wealthy tourist, primarily, to start with.
Initially, yes, but it opens up regions that were previously inaccessible for any kind of economic activity.
And speaking of connectivity, we can't ignore the logistics. There is a 10,000 crore outlay for container manufacturing.
High containers, that sounds incredibly boring. Just big metal boxes.
It is boring, and that's why it's critical. It's the plumbing again. Right now, India relies heavily on leased containers from China and other nations to ship its goods.
I didn't know that. When global supply chains crunch, like they did a few years ago, container rates skyrocket and Indian exporters suffer. They can't get their goods out.
So if you want to be an export powerhouse, make in India, you need your own boxes to put the goods in.
You need your own boxes. It's a small detail, but a critical link in the supply chain to ensure our exports are competitive and reliable.
It's the unglamorous stuff that actually makes the economy work. Okay, let's pivot to Kartavya 2, fulfilling aspirations. This is about the software of the nation, the people.
The headline goal here is ambitious. India wants to hold a 10% share of the global services market by 2047.
That is huge. We are known for IT services, but 10% of the entire global services market. That includes finance, tourism, legal services, everything. How do we get there?
Well, they are setting up a high-powered Education to Employment and Enterprises committee to map this out. So part of the answer is we'll figure it out.
Like a committee.
But the specifics that are mentioned are where it gets interesting. Has you heard the term orange economy?
I have, and I love the name. It sounds vibrant. What does it actually refer to?
It refers to the AVGC sector: animation, visual effects, gaming, and comics. The creative industries.
Ah, the creative arts. But is this serious economics, or is it a bit of a sideshow?
Oh, it's serious money. Think about the metaverse. The global gaming industry, which is bigger than movies and music combined, CGI in every Hollywood and Bollywood film. This is a massive global market.
We have the talent for it.
We have a huge pool of young, creative, tech-savvy talent. The budget projects a demand for 2 million professionals in this sector by 2030. So the proposal is to set up AVGC content creator labs in 15,000 secondary schools and 500 colleges.
Wait, hang on, 15,000 schools. So we're talking about high school kids learning visual effects and game design as part of their curriculum.
Yes, catching them young, building the pipeline from the ground up. The idea is that India shouldn't just be the back office for coding. It should be the back office for creativity.
Wow.
Just like we dominate IT support, the ambition is to dominate the creation of digital worlds.
That is a very forward-looking move, moving from coding to creating. It acknowledges that the future of work might be more about imagination than just calculation.
And it dovetails with the tourism focus. We mentioned temple towns, but they're also pushing ecological tourism.
The turtle trails. I loved that phrase. What is that exactly?
It's about developing coastal nesting sites for turtles, like on the Odisha coast, as properly managed, sustainable tourist attractions. It's monetizing conservation.
I see.
Along with that, they're developing bird-watching trails and sustainable mountain trails in the Himalayas and the Western and Eastern Ghats. It's about monetizing nature without destroying it.
And the Big Cat Summit, what's the play there?
India is hosting the first global summit for the International Big Cat Alliance. It positions India as a leader in conservation on the world stage. We have tigers, lions, leopards, snow leopards.
We have the brand recognition.
We have the brand.
Yeah.
And that attracts a specific kind of high-value eco-tourist who is willing to spend a lot of money for an authentic experience. And it also mentioned developing 15 archaeological sites like Lothal and Rakhigarhi with immersive storytelling.
It's leveraging our natural and historical assets. Now, what about health? We talked about biopharma from a manufacturing side, but what about the care side?
Two big things here. First, medical value tourism. They are setting up 5 regional medical hubs specifically to attract international patients.
People coming here for surgeries because the quality is high and the cost is low.
Exactly. But the second one is more domestic and demographic geriatric care.
Care for the elderly.
The population is aging. It's a slow process in India compared to the West, but it's happening. The budget proposes training 1.5 lakh caregivers. But interestingly, the curriculum combines medical skills with yoga and wellness.
That's a unique blend. It's not just about changing deadpans.
It's not. It creates a holistic Indian caregiver brand, and these professionals can be exported. As Europe and Japan age rapidly, they have a massive shortage of caregivers.
So we're creating a skilled workforce for a global need.
India wants to supply a workforce that is trained in both modern medicine and traditional wellness. It's a smart play on our unique strengths.
That's smart. Exporting empathy and skill.
Exactly. And also mentions upgrading drug testing labs to boost Ayurveda exports. The government wants Ayurveda to be a credible global export, not just a niche alternative that requires scientific rigor, which these labs will provide.
Let's move to the third pillar, Kartavya 3, inclusion, ensuring everyone gets a slice of the pie. We have to start with agriculture. It's still the biggest employer in the country by far.
The standout here is Bharat Vistar.
Which is an app, a platform.
It's described as a multilingual AI tool. It integrates the agricultural stack, all the existing digital data on soil health, weather forecasts, market prices, and research from agricultural universities to give farmers customized advice in their own language.
So a farmer in Bihar can ask in Bhojpuri, what should I plant right now given the weather forecast and the current market price for maize? And get an AI-driven answer.
Ideally, yes. That's the vision. It's about bridging the information gap. Right now, extension services, people going out to help farmers, are expensive and slow. AI scales that expertise instantly.
And it looks like they're pushing away from just staple crops.
Yes, there's a big push for high-value agriculture. Instead of just rice and wheat, they were focusing on niche crops. Coconut with a promotion scheme, and then cashew and cocoa.
Cocoa. I didn't realize India had a big play in cocoa. I associate that with Ghana or Ivory Coast.
We have the perfect climate for it, and the South Kerala, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu. The goal is to create premium global brands for Indian cashew and cocoa, not just export them as raw commodities. And let's not forget sandalwood.
Sandalwood.
There is a specific mention of restoring the glory of Indian sandalwood.
That used to be a major luxury export, but struggled with regulations and smuggling for decades.
Exactly. They want to formalize it, encourage plantations, and bring it back as a high-value, sustainable luxury export. If we can brand Indian sandalwood like French champagne, the value add is immense.
Now, one of the phrases that caught my eye in the intro was she-marts. This falls under women-led development. What is a she-mart? It sounds like a store.
It is a retail outlet, but the ownership model is the key. It's a community-owned retail outlet set up within cluster-level federations of women's self-help groups.
So, run by women, for women?
Run and owned by women. That's the crucial part.
Why is this significant? What's the shift?
Because for years, the narrative for rural women has been microcredit, lending them small amounts of money to survive or start tiny individual businesses. This initiative says, let's move from credit-linked livelihoods to becoming owners of enterprises.
So they don't just make the pickles or the handicrafts, they own the shop where it's sold. They capture the retail margin.
Correct. Owning the retail outlet gives them control over branding, pricing, and the profit margin. It's a shift from being a borrower to being a business owner. That is a powerful psychological and economic shift.
What about regional development? We often hear about the Northeast being a priority. Anything specific there?
Yes, the focus is on the Purvodaya, or Rising East. They mentioned an East Coast industrial corridor with a new node at Durapur. But specifically for the Northeast, they are developing Buddhist circuits in Arunachal, Sikkim, and other states.
Tapping into the pilgrimage market from East Asia?
Exactly. Japan, Korea, Thailand, Vietnam. These are wealthy nations with deep spiritual ties to Buddhism. Connecting the Northeast to that circuit brings in high-spending tourists and integrates the region culturally and economically with East Asia.
And finally, under inclusion, the Divyang persons with disabilities.
Two key schemes here. Divyang Kaushal Yojana, which is skills training, but it's not generic training. It's for specific roles in IT, EVGC, and hospitality where their abilities can shine.
So tailored skilling.
And Divyang Sahara Yojana, which is about scaling up the production of assistive devices like high-tech artificial limbs. But the interesting part is they want to create retail-style centers where people can actually try these devices out before getting them, improving the dignity and the fit of the process.
That brings us to Section 6, the part everyone checks first, the part that usually determines if people cheer or groan, the taxes.
The big news. The Income Tax Act 1961 is being replaced.
Wow.
Yeah.
1961. That law was older than most of our listeners. It was a patchwork of amendments on top of amendments.
It was a labyrinth. The new Income Tax Act 2025 will be effective from April 1st, 2026. The review was announced back in July 2024, and they've actually delivered on the timeline.
What is the main goal here, just to clean up?
The stated goal is simplification. The finance minister said the forms are redesigned so ordinary citizens can comply without difficulty.
I'll believe that when I see the form. But were there specific measures for ease of living? Some good news.
Yes, several direct benefits. First, tax collected at source, or TCS. If you send your child abroad for education or go for medical treatment, the TCS is reduced from 5% to 2%.
That's a direct saving for middle-class families. That 3% difference is cash flow they get to keep. It's real money.
It is. TCS on overseas tour packages is also down to 2%. Then, they've staggered the filing deadlines to avoid the website crashing on July 31st.
Oh, thank God. The annual July panic where everyone tries to file at the last minute.
Yes. Now, individuals file by July 31st, but businesses that don't need an audit file by August 31st. It spreads the load on the system.
That's just common sense.
Also, if you make a mistake on your return, you now have until March 31st of the next year to revise it, just by paying a nominal fee.
That's forgiving. It acknowledges that people make honest mistakes.
And a compassionate change. Interest awarded on motor accident claims is now tax-exempt.
That's a small but very humane detail. If you get compensation for an accident, for trauma, the government shouldn't be taking a cut of that.
Agreed. But host, it wasn't all just good news and simplifications. There are some watch-out areas regarding compliance. The stick to go with the carrot.
Lay it on us. What's the stick?
The biggest one is the Foreign Asset Disclosure Scheme. It's a one-time, 6-month window. If you have undisclosed assets abroad, a bank account, a property, shares, you can declare them now.
A voluntary disclosure scheme. We've seen these before.
Yes, but this one feels final. It acts as an immunity scheme. If you have undisclosed income, let's call it Category A, you pay 60% of it, which is tax plus penalty. That sounds high, but you are safe from prosecution.
60% is steep, but it keeps you out of jail.
Exactly. Then there is Category B. You disclose the income, but maybe you forgot to list the specific asset in the form, a procedural lapse. For that, you just pay a 1 lakh fee to regularize it.
What's the thinking here? Why now?
The analysis here is clear. The government is cleaning the slate. They're giving you one last chance to come clean before they use all the automatic information exchange agreements with other countries to crack down hard.
So it's a speak now or forever hold your peace moment because the data is coming anyway.
Precisely. The other radical change is on buyback taxation. This is going to upset some investors in the stock market.
Okay. Buybacks are when a company uses its cash to buy its own shares from the market. How does the tax on that change?
Previously, the company paid a tax on the buyback amount. It was simple. Now that tax on the company is gone. Instead, the buyback will be taxed in the hands of the shareholder. It'll be treated as either a dividend or a capital gain.
Ouch, that shifts the burden directly to the investor. So if a company buys back my shares, I have to pay tax on that money at my personal slab rate.
Correct. And to make sure promoters don't game the system, they added an additional tax on them to stop tax arbitrage, ensuring they don't use buybacks just to avoid paying taxes on dividends. It closes a loophole, but it definitely hurts the efficiency of buybacks for the average shareholder.
Before we wrap up the tax section, what about customs? Anything making our online shopping cheaper?
Yes. Personal imports. If you order goods from abroad for personal use, say a gadget or some clothes, the duty is reduced from 20% to 10%.
That's significant for anyone who shops on international websites.
It is. And critically, for health, customs duty exemption on 17 specific cancer drugs and drugs for rare diseases. Again, linking back to the theme of reducing the high cost of healthcare for critical illnesses, they also removed duties on parts for microwave ovens and for aircraft maintenance.
So let's try to pull this all together. We've covered a lot of ground. We have a 4.3% fiscal deficit target, a 12 lakh crore capex push, a new tax code, and biopharma factories. What is the overarching vibe you get from this budget?
The vibe is capacity building. That's the phrase that keeps coming to my mind. The government is saying we've spent the last decade building the hard infrastructure, the roads, the power plants, the digital stack. Now we are building the capacity of the private sector and the citizens to use it.
It feels very synchronized. The biopharma push needs the logistics infrastructure we talked about. The MSME push needs the digital finance infrastructure from the asset-backed securities.
Exactly. It's all interconnected. And the finance minister noted that over 350 reforms have been rolled out just since Independence Day 2025. It's a reform express. The pace is relentless.
So what does this mean for our listener? Let's make it practical. If you had to give advice based on this document.
Okay. If you are a professional, you need to look at the new Tax Act, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Get your advisor to walk you through it. But also look at the skilling opportunities. The government is shouting from the rooftops that they need people in AVGC animation and gaming and high-tech manufacturing. The jobs of the future are being funded today.
And if you are an investor?
Look at the asset-backed securities market that's about to open up for MSMEs. That could be a new, relatively safe, short-term debt asset class for your portfolio. And be very aware of the shift in buyback taxation. It changes the math on how you evaluate companies returning cash to shareholders.
And as a citizen, just a regular person.
Expect better infrastructure in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities. The focus is shifting away from the overcrowded metros. And expect more digital governance, easier tax filing, AI in agriculture, digital health records. Life is going to get more digital, for better or worse.
It sounds like a plan for a very different kind of India by 2047. But, as we always do on the deep dive, we need to leave the listeners with something to chew on, a provocative thought.
I've been thinking about the Education to Employment Committee and this massive push for AI across sectors, from farming to healthcare. The budget puts a huge amount of money into hard infrastructure, the machines, the corridors, the labs.
The concrete and the steel, the hardware.
But also talks a lot about soft infrastructure, skilling, education, caregiving, the software. My question, my provocative thought is this. Can India's soft infrastructure, its skilling and education systems, scale up fast enough to manage the hard infrastructure this budget is paying for?
That is the big question. You can build a factory, but can you find 500 people skilled enough to run it?
Exactly. We are building semiconductor plants and biolabs. The hardware is ready, or it's being built. But is the software, the workforce, ready for 2047? We are asking high schoolers to teach visual effects and colleges to teach AI ethics.
That's a huge change.
That is a massive transformation of the human capital pipeline. And it has to happen fast. If the people don't upgrade as fast as the roads, we might have excellent highways with no one skilled enough to drive the high-tech economy on them.
The hardware is ready, but is the software ready? That is a fantastic question to end on. It puts the ball back in our court, the citizens, to upskill and adapt to this new reality they're building.
Indeed. It's a race between our infrastructure and our education. The budget has funded the infrastructure side. Now the race is on for the education side to catch up.
Thank you so much for guiding us through this labyrinth of numbers and policies. You managed to make tax law interesting, which is, frankly, a miracle in itself.
My pleasure. It's a fascinating time to be watching the economy. There's never a dull moment.
And thank you to you, the listener, for tuning in to this deep dive into the Union Budget 2026-27. Remember, this isn't just news, it's the roadmap for the next 2 decades. We'll catch you on the next one.
Goodbye.